Hello, hello, hello. I am Mayor Watt, and welcome to Non Sequitur News. Today is June 24th, 2024. This is Season 3, Episode 176. And you might be questioning why I said that date. Well, this is a time machine episode. Mayoral duties kept me from doing the show yesterday, so I got in my time machine and blipped back in time to do yesterday's show today. So I guess it's yesterday's news tomorrow today. Anyway, if you look at the screen, it actually says June 24th, 2024. That is the nature of our time machine. I go through the articles pretty quick in time machine episodes. So let's get into it. We're going to be talking about filtering for bad actors. That is a lot of guac. Only lawyers know the law. Unstoppable Cybertruck. AI music startups get sued. Illegal chemical dumping. Spontaneous descent. Can you define immediate and delayed move-in date? And then finally, a place to text and drive in peace. Let's get into the first episode, or the first article. But before I do that, everything is powered by ohmTown.com. So go over and become a citizen right after this. All right, folks. So I didn't put the show notes up properly. Oh, doggone it. So I won't be able to do this. I'll you know what? I'll do it live. Why not? I can do it live. Just 1 second, folks. Sorry. So I always put the show notes up so that everybody can go along with the show, and you can click on the links. But if I don't do this before the show, then I have to do it during the show, and it kind of ruins the production value, you know. But let's do this. I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so if you type in the chat !NSN for non sequitur news, it'll pull up all of the show's articles for today. And they're not going to be they're going to all be there. The links are all going to be there, but the titles are going to be all wonky because I didn't format it properly. But anyway, let's get into the articles anyway, because some of these are really weird. So this first article is over on the Hatch Ideas channel because it's about a business. DC coffee chain lists CEOs and Uber lobbyists as baristas to halt union drive. A coffee company called Compass Coffee is accused of hiring 124 additional people before a union election next month. A coffee chain in Washington, D.C., or in the D.C. area, I guess, is accused of hiring dozens of friends of management, including other local food service executives and an Uber lobbyist, in an effort to defeat a union election scheduled for July 16th. Workers at 7 Compass Coffee locations, more than a third of the company's stores, announced their intent to unionize in May 2024, and the company has 18 cafes in Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and its coffee can be purchased in grocery stores throughout the area. So I've never heard of Compass Coffee, but they're accused of hiring 124 additional people to basically neuter the union, because if you don't get enough votes out of the union population, or the employee population, then you're not going to be able to unionize. So, or they can vote no. I guess certain people have to qualify as an employee. I would think would fix this. But anybody can be marked as an employee. So the coffee chain in Washington, D.C. Oh, this article, by the way, is over at The Guardian. And Michael Sonato, it's Sonato, put the article together. In a post on Twitter, Compass Coffee United accused the coffee chain of hiring 124 additional people at cafes that are attempting to unionize. The union also accused the company of manipulating worker schedules retroactively to make it look like the new employee is eligible to vote in the union election, which basically is going to land them in some serious shit, because it's fraud. It's outright fraud, and they're basically going to unionize by default. The NLRB doesn't take lightly to this kind of manipulation. So union organizing began more than a year ago due to ongoing issues at the company, including the elimination of tips for workers, unfair disciplinary actions, and broken equipment issues, said Meyer Silverman. I don't know how they can take tips away from workers, but okay. They say, quote, really, all we're asking for is just respect, safe working conditions, fair compensation, and benefits, fundamentally, which all equates to just human decency and respect in the workplace. But, you don't become a billionaire by having respect for your employees. Come on, you need to work them until they become old and bitter and just die. So the union has filed an unfair labor practice charge with the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, against Compass Coffee over their conduct. Sid I was just looking at some games. Anyway, Meyer Silverman said they intended to file numerous charges over the mass new hires and the alleged retaliation workers have experienced since the union campaign went public. Yeah, you can't do it in private either. So they didn't respond to multiple requests for comment. After the publication, Liz, quote, Tizzy, I guess that's their nickname, Tizzy Brown, a member of the Uber's federal affairs team, said, I recently attended a training on June 9th alongside several other new hires at Compass. And as part of the training, I signed the same paperwork everyone there did. However, I never worked a shift beyond the initial training, and as soon as this all came to light, I reached out to Compass and asked to be removed from their employment system. This was entirely in my personal capacity as Tizzy Brown and has nothing to do with my full-time job. A member of Uber's federal affairs team. Interesting. Yeah, because you can operate entirely separate. Michael Haft, the owner of CEO of Compass Coffee, said in an email, quote, we believe all employees at Compass Coffee at the locations that have been petitioned are eligible. The lists reflect the current employees at the time of the vote. As such, we will stay in close communication with our partners to ensure the most up-to-date list on the 14th. As there is often normal turnover and growth in the service industry, especially seasonally, and we expect our final list to be reflective of that. Oh, yeah. And due to privacy concerns, we have a long-standing policy not to comment on individual employees without their consent, of course. Yeah, they're going to unionize with the SEIU, Affiliated Workers United, which represents more than 450 Starbucks stores that have unionized. So I guess the guy should be happy that they're being compared to Starbucks. Why not? Let's keep going. The next article is over on the Mobile Channel. You're going to need a bigger bowl. Highway bandits in Mexico make off with 40 tons of avocados. That's right. Highway bandits in Mexico made off with over 40 tons of avocados. Federal prosecutors said Friday the avocados were stolen in two separate robberies in the western state of Michoacan, Mexico's main producer of the fruit. Yeah, we've been talking about this. Basically, due to safety concerns, inspections have stalled. And so now, who knows what's going on. The article is over at apnews.com, and it's only a small little snippet. But yeah, it says they don't know where it is, but hijackings of entire shipments are rare, but general theft is not that big of a deal. They know about that, but 40 tons? That's a lot of guac. Let's keep going. The next article is over at Law Nerd. All of these are channels which are going to translate into shows over at Twitch and YouTube. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, be sure to follow us here. Like this channel is a location for news aggregated from our 6 main categories, and there's 50 channels inside ohmTown.com. Each one of those is going to be a show, kind of like this one, Non Sequitur News. Non Sequitur News is just one of many of the channels. They're areas of focus, and I created ohmTown so that I could manage my information overload. And in the process of that, several years go by, and I showed it to a few people, and they thought it was really interesting and that I should open it up to the public, and so I did. That led to this, and I really want to stream, so I started up streaming 2.5 years ago now. So this article over in the Law Nerd channel is titled "Breaking the Chains of Hierarchy: Why Non-Lawyer Must Go." Yeah, this is something that I've been talking about with people in the legal space for a while. The term is more than just a label. It reflects outdated hierarchies and is a barrier to a more inclusive and collaborative legal environment. One of the problems that I've always seen is that you don't have to be a lawyer to actually understand the law. You have to be a lawyer to practice the law, but the practice and discussion of law are two vastly different things. Even the argumentation and debate around law, the construction of law, the practice of law is entirely different than the practice with clients. One of the main things in the legal system is, well, you have to understand the law and you have to be able to debate it. And it's largely a logic exercise. But the biggest thing that takes place in law that brings you before any type of investigative body isn't that you mess up in the courtroom. It's that you commingle funds or screw around with people's money or do something fiscally wrong. Not that you botch a case. I mean, there's gross incompetence, but more than not, you end up in an ethics hearing because there's something going on with a trust. So Olga V. Mack put this article together over at Above the Law. And it says, the deck statement says what I just got done saying about the term is more than just a label. It reflects outdated hierarchies and is a barrier to a more inclusive and collaborative legal environment. Now, what they talk about in this, it says, could you explain why you believe the term non-lawyer is problematic in the legal profession? And Cher Estrin, a seasoned legal professional and thought leader, will share her insights as to why the term non-lawyer is problematic and how it impacts the legal community. Cher will explore the historical context of job titles within the legal sector and affects this terminology on professional identity and the potential benefits of moving away from such labels. So they say non-lawyer stands out not for its inclusivity, but for its exclusivity. It's a label that reeks of hierarchy, casts those it describes into a shadow of what they are not, rather than illuminating what they are. This linguistic relic perpetuates a caste system within legal support roles, unjustly positioning certain professionals as secondary and less important to the omnipotent lawyer. It's kind of like doctor. As well. Although a doctor has specialized training and potentially years in grade, so do various strata within the medical profession, so much so that I hardly ever see an actual doctor. I see some quote unquote subordinate by title medical practitioner who then has to corroborate or correlate whatever their findings are with a doctor so that they can issue medication or something else. There's always checks and balances, but by prefixing the roles with non, we implicitly state that the lawyer is the only significant figure in the legal landscape. Paralegals, legal assistants, and other support staff are relegated to subordinate positions. And in fact, that is how it works. If you go into a law office, Although paralegals are tasked with a vast amount of duties, same thing with legal assistants and other support staff, the only one that has the authority to practice law in the guide of practicing law is going to be the attorney, the one with the law degree that went to law school, passed the bar, got accepted into a law firm as a lawyer, not just a paralegal, right? Even though the paralegals do a vast amount of the legal research. So how does the non-lawyer affect the professional identity and self-perception of legal support staff? Cher says that it perpetuates a hierarchy that can lead to the feelings of inferiority and inadequacy. But really, I think the problem is more that it diminishes the sense of value. This is my talking now. I think when somebody says, "Oh, you're just a paralegal," that's really what the non-lawyer problem is. Even though, again, I would have to say that paralegals do, a massive amount of legal research, and they understand the law and the paperwork implicit in conducting law and a practice is bound in many paralegals. So they say, can you discuss the historical evolution? They say initially the legal secretary title was predominant as roles evolved to include additional tasks traditionally associated with paralegals, such as legal research and drafting. The term legal assistant emerged. This change was partly driven by the realization that certain tasks could be billable, unlike traditional secretarial duties. So because somebody does legal research, they're billed at a different, but far inferior rate than the attorney. And so you can specifically ask for an attorney to do the legal research, but it's going to be so much more expensive. Originally, legal assistant and paralegal were interchangeable, leading to confusion. To address this, the American Bar Association approved paralegal as the primary title, and the trend towards specialization is expected to continue, and just like the medical profession did the same thing. So yeah, quite an interesting discussion, but I certainly believe that non-lawyer must go beyond just the concept that only a lawyer knows what the law is. They're the only one that can, quote, practice law. And it becomes a tenuous issue when somebody gives legal advice and they're not an attorney, because it's interpretation. You should always speak to an attorney. I am not an attorney. I'm not your attorney. And even if I was an attorney, I'm not your attorney. So go and talk to an attorney that you pay and you can yell at. All right, let's go on to the next article. This one will be quick. Tesla Cybertruck unexpectedly accelerates into home with rear wheels locked. A new Tesla Cybertruck owner experienced a seemingly new issue, an unresponsive throttle. He took to Twitter to voice his concerns about the defect and the automaker's lack of action earlier this month. Now, the author says, I should be clear, this fault is unrelated to the slippery pedal pad that would wedge itself in the footwell. That's something different. It's also different than the wet car, not in car wash mode, basically bricking the vehicle. And it's different than the 12-volt battery died, so it locked the child in the car, and a bunch of other things, really. So Ryan Eric King over at jalopnik.com put the article together, and the deck statement says, a Tesla rep allegedly told the owner, quote, the accelerator may or may not disengage when the brake is depressed. I don't care if it's sad. It should always work. Anyway, this actually, I watched this happen. It was really interesting to find it showing up in ohmTown. Yeah, they said basically that in surveillance footage, the impractical pickup darted up a hill into a neighbor's house and the rear wheels completely locked up. The owner stated that the throttle and steering were unresponsive as he held the brake pedal to the floor, putting down a pair of 50-foot long skid marks. And if there is an email that shows this response that hey, your brakes may or may not work. There is some serious shit coming Tesla's way, but I guess we'll find out. It says it's not precisely clear what went wrong with the Cybertruck this time, but it has been a headache since it launched. Apparently launched into a neighbor's house. I'm really curious about this. Yeah, you can actually see this. The surveillance, the truck is right there in the if you're watching the VOD. You can actually see the Cybertruck shoot down this hill and then straight up the other side of the hill and just keep on going. Pretty amazing. So, yeah, I think the Cybertruck is just stupid, but I'm not the owner of a Cybertruck. All right, let's keep going though. The next article is over in the Mobile Channel. Universal, Sony, Warner sue AI music startups over copyright infringement. Major record labels are coming after artificial intelligence music startups, alleging en masse copyright infringement. Brittany Wynn over at Quartz or QZ.com put the article together, and the deck statement says artificial intelligence startup Udio's model was used to create the viral BBL Drizzy song. And frankly, I don't care. Here's the deal. It's not taking the music verbatim and making even the mildest of snippets based on everything that I've heard and arguments and complaints that I've heard about artificial intelligence music generation. It's unique sounds that are being made, and anything created with a AI right now can't be copyrighted, so it's all open source, or I should say without copyright, not open source, but it's without copyright. And the lyrics are randomly generated, seemingly, with some contextual meaning, I suppose, but it all seems really light in that context. I've made many AI-generated songs because I want to launch a channel here called Mixwar, part of the ohmTown network of shows. But with this looming, I've been idling, and I talked about it a couple of times, but now they're saying that this is en masse copyright. But I can listen to music anytime. I can get inspiration from it anytime as a human, and I can make derivative works of it as long as I don't even use a slight semblance of the notation directly verbatim, right? If you do, even a couple of strums of a guitar will land you in a courtroom or at least in a heated debate with an attorney. And it never is cheap, and it's always a waste of time. So for me, I'm like, you know what, AI, you do it. Do everything. Crush it. I really want you to be vindicated in this. It says these are straightforward cases of copyright infringement involving unlicensed copying of sound recordings on a massive scale. The lawsuits, led by the trade group, the RIAA, of course, allege that AI startups are training their models on copyrighted sound recordings from artists of different genres and time periods at an almost unimaginable scale. They're not consuming anything. They're not keeping it en masse. They're not even regurgitating it verbatim. They're basically I would say that they're creating the DNA of the songs to better understand the musical construction and then spinning that into something different. And nobody should have to pay in perpetuity for understanding music. People go to school for it, and then they pay their school debt, whatever it is, or they pay for the books, whatever it is, and that's it. And that's all that this AI is. Just because it's a business doesn't make it any more different than inspiration instead of an ongoing commercial enterprise. This is just this is greed on the rights holders part. Yeah, I don't buy into it for a second. So both Suno and Udio allow users to generate music from text prompts. Udio's model was used to create the viral BBL Drizzy diss track. In the lawsuit against Udio, which was filed in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, the label says The labels say neither the startup nor any other generative AI company can be allowed to advance toward this goal by trampling the rights of copyright owners. But it's not. It's generating its own unique. If there isn't any fucking DNA, oh, pardon me. If there isn't any match to the notation of the song, then so be it. It's just like another new artist coming out. It's just like a tool. That's all it is. AI is a tool. It's not making it verbatim. It's not cloning other people's works. It's just, this is all protectionist crap. I'd rather empower a whole lot of people who don't have the time or patience to sit there and create music from scratch just because they have an inspiration to create music. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's dumb. Anyway, neither RIAA UDO nor Suno immediately responded to a request for comment. The RIAA is seeking $150,000 in damages per work infringed. Well, what work? What are the works that are infringed? That I would like to know. What are the works that are infringed? All right. The next article is over in the Smack Talk channel. Whistleblower claims to have nearly died because of illegal chemical exposure, and they're naming Apple. An ex-employee has accused Apple of exposing her to gaseous organic chemicals from a secret chip fabrication plant located near her home. Apple's Santa Clara operation was visited by the EPA, and a whistleblower who said in September 2021, accusing her of leaking its intellectual property at the time, they claimed that this was the result of retaliation by Apple against people who had spoken out in the Apple II movement. Also in 2021, the whistleblower claimed that Apple was building where her office was situated, was built on a Superfund site. This is previously contaminated area, she said, reported Apple to the EPA. This really doesn't seem to make sense. The article was written by Apple Insider staff over at appleinsider.com. Now in a separate case, the whistleblower is saying on Mastodon that she has a copy of an EPA report concerning an investigation into a tip-off regarding Apple. Quote, in 2020, I nearly died from mysterious industrial chemical exposure at my apartment, she wrote on Mastodon. Later in 2023, I discovered my employer was dumping toxic waste into the apartment windows from their skunkworks semiconductor fab next door. And they tipped off the US EPA, who sent their environmental cops to raid Apple's plant in 2023. The US EPA finally released the report of their enforcement inspections and sent a copy on Friday. Okay, the report is apparently in this Dropbox. The EPA report includes descriptions of 19 potential violations of regulation by Apple at the site. It appears that the majority was found at Apple were regarding the correct labeling and dating of items. The most serious appears to concern a 1,700-gallon CRA hazardous waste solvent tank, which was not being tracked properly by the relevant Resource Conservation and Recovery Act procedures. And that potential violation and a series of further ones are marked in the report as having been complied with since the inspection. About half of the potential violations are listed as still outstanding, however. Yeah. All right. Weird. I don't know if this is actually newsworthy, but I thought that I would plop it into the stream because the way when I first heard this, I said there is no way in hell Apple is dumping stuff somewhere. It would destroy them, and even this, I think, stands to wound Apple to some of the people who are more likely to immediately embrace the claim. but I think it's absurd, and there's no way that they would target one person like that. So, and then just because there's something about a hazardous waste solvent tank, it doesn't mean that it's being dumped somewhere. That's almost absurd, but I'm sure that there's something, these labels, I'm sure should just destroy Apple. I mean, should just totally bring them down because they have labels on incorrectly. Let's go. Next article is over in the Mobile Channel. A Korean Air Boeing plane dropped 25,000 feet in 5 minutes. A Korean Air Boeing 737 MAX 8 heading to Taiwan had to return to South Korea after dropping 25,000 feet in 5 minutes, about 30 minutes after takeoff on Saturday, according to Business Insider and Yonhap News Agency. The article is posted by QZ.com. Miranda Neubauer is the author. Yeah, so apparently there was a pressurization system failure and the flight had to return to North Korea. I don't know if there's anything else in here. Yeah, Business Insider highlighted social media video showing shaking and oxygen masks hanging from the ceiling. The reported 15 passengers suffered from eardrum pain and hyperventilation during the descent, of which 13 went to the hospital. The company says they're complying with relevant authorities to investigate. The plane first came to service at the end of 2019 and was delivered to Korean Air in 2022. But Boeing is taking a beating, so it just seems like it never stops, though, for Boeing. Let's go on to the next article. This next article is over in the Mobile Channel. Railroads ordered to provide hazardous cargo details immediately after derailment, to which I said, can you define immediate? The administration has tightened disclosure rules for trains carrying hazardous material, with railroads now being required to inform local first responders about hazardous materials immediately after a derailment. And this is a new requirement announced Monday that caps significant scrutiny of the railway industry after a Norfolk Southern train released toxic chemicals into the town of East Palestine, Ohio last year after derailing. This, by the way, is just one of, in the year previous, there were 2,200 derailments of one type or another. And frankly, it's largely because of maintenance and supervision. They cut the number of people down from a multitude to 2 to they're looking at 1 and even automating it. And there isn't as much maintenance monitoring going on. There was one person that I read about that had video of a train that was going over a track and who had reported that the track had actually separated at a weld. The whole weld point, it's like that wide, like an inch or 2 inches wide, had separated completely, yet trains were still going over it. So the article's over at The Hill, written by Rachel Frazen, and it says train operators will now be required to issue an emergency notification to local public safety officials following incidents with trains carrying hazardous materials. The rule will take effect in 30 days, and it was announced last week. In addition to the emergency notification provision, it will also require all railroads to put together real-time information about what their trains are carrying, including what hazardous materials they are shipping and where on the train those items are located. And they'll also require to include emergency response information and an emergency contact. And it's all, then they talk about vinyl chloride. We have 2 more articles, and then I'll be able to turn off the time machine. And I have to stick to a certain time frame because the time machine only allows us to go back an hour and some change. Sometimes I push it, but I have to be careful. Otherwise, I'll be stuck in the past. So the next article is over on the Non Sequitur News channel. That's this show. Happens to be a channel over on ohmTown.com as well. And you can go over to YouTube. That's where the long-term storage is of all of the shows, along with show notes. Pardon me. So a 3-bedroom apartment in San Francisco is on the market for $488,000, but the catch is you can't move in for 30 years. A San Francisco home that is listed for $488,000 is valued at more than triple that. The catch is that a tenant already lives there and has the right to do so for another 30 years. San Francisco is famously expensive and the bargain properties rarely come up. This is a three-bedroom home in San Francisco for less than $500,000. So Joshua Zitzer over at Business Insider put the article together. I don't know if they're going to have pictures of inside it, but let's find out. I always love Business Insider. That's why I read their news. That's why I subscribe to their service. And that's why I like to talk about them here in ohmTown. So the average sale price of a house there is $1.4 million. But you're not going to be able to move into this. According to the listing with Park North Real Estate, the property in Russian Hill in upscale San Francisco neighborhood has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, is 1,100 square feet. However, it's also occupied, with the tenant having possible occupancy rights until 2053. The listing said the tenant pays $416.67 monthly, and will continue to pay that amount throughout their time living there. So speaking to ABC News, Stephen McDonald, a landlord-tenant legal expert, said for some reason they gave this person a 30-year right of possession. I've seen that before. It's kind of sloppy way of real estate planning. He added they can do it that way. I think they should have done it a different way. No shit news in the time machine. So the local outlet reported that the current tenant, 83-year-old Sandra Lee, lives there with her daughter, Cheryl Lee, 66. It's owned by Sandra Lee's son. Sandra Lee told the Standard that he put the house up for sale against her wishes. She said her stepfather had secretly arranged a lease in 2018, which secures her low rent and a place to live until 2053. If it wasn't for the lease that my son didn't know about that was made in 2018, I don't know where we'd be. So I guess the son's a real shit. But they don't go into any of that. Business Insider was unable to contact the son for comment. The real estate company didn't respond. And so if it's in the son's name, I wonder if the son's the real owner or not. I hope that they're doing something about it. The 66-year-old daughter and 83-year-old mom versus the apparently deceased dad and son. Weird. All right. Finally, the last article, which I think was the most absurd of everything that I read today. And stumbled across it pretty late in my parsing of the news. Non sequitur news is where it's housed. Map shows only state where it's okay to text and drive. As of August 2023, there's only one state that still allows drivers to use their cell phone while still on the road. I don't know where it's going to be, but I'm guessing Wyoming. So map shows only state where it's okay to text and drive. It's housed. This article is over in newsweek.com. Hugh Cameron is the author. And let's see. 49 states enforce some kind of distracted driving law, but one has yet to ban texting behind the wheel. The state of Montana currently has no statewide ban on the use of handheld devices for drivers, allowing those at the wheel to text, scroll, and call without fear of penalty. Wow. So there you go. That's interesting. So wait, why is that one purple? So there's no ban. That one has banned for all drivers as a secondary offense. Yeah, I had to look at that again. Why is that one says why would they? Weird. All right. Well, anyway, that's interesting. This map which uses data. Hold on. Missouri's ban only applies for drivers 21 or younger. So it's Montana. It says Missouri's. All right. So for whatever reason, I got all confused. So the state of Montana currently has no statewide ban, and they highlighted here, but right below it, it says Missouri's hands-free law came into effect August 2023, prohibited the use of cell phones or other handheld devices by adults while driving, leaving Montana as the only state where it's still fully permitted. So yeah, Montana has no ban. Interesting. There's a whole lot more over at this article, but Newsweek has contacted the Montana Traffic Education Association for their thoughts on the state's traffic policies. Why wouldn't they just ban it a long time ago? According to Murphy, a law firm specializing in Montana law, the state's comparative fault rule ascribes liability to those involved in an accident based on their relative culpability. So a party can recover damages as long as they're found to be 50% or less at fault for the accident. Yeah, but how do you prove that? I mean, if somebody says they were driving while texting, does that immediately put the onus on that person, and thus the liability laws already assign fault? But they don't have anything that points to that, right? So a party can recover damages as long as they're found to be 50% or less. All right. Well, somebody has to be 51%, right? If both are immediate, both of them were so there's no criminal issue. There's no, or I should say, there's no fault at the state level. This is all civil. You get in a couple of accidents, it's hashed out by the insurance companies. But a person driving with their cell phone isn't going to be criminal at fault in any way, shape, or form, apparently. So I guess negligent driving or what do you call it? Like when you're speeding way over the speed limit, there's a certain term, reckless driving. I guess you can drive and text all you want in Montana, because they haven't figured out that if you are looking at your phone, you're distracted. Yeah, humans don't multitask, folks. Nothing good can come of it. So we're going to turn off our cell phone, and that means powering down the time machine, and we'll blip back to the front page, and then we'll call it the end of today's show. I'll be back 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. And if you're watching this live, it's because the time machine actually facilitates that. So we're going to be back tomorrow, today, later. See ya.